Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Hey, podcast listeners, want to stay informed without the daily email overload? Sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Every Tuesday morning, we bring you the top local stories, plus highlights from Idaho Matters and the Mountain West News Bureau, all in one easy read. Stay in the know without the clutter. Subscribe now at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Boise is a city known for its strong sense of community with access to the outdoors and a quality of life that draws families from across the region. But a new youth roadmap takes a deeper look at how young people actually experience life here. And those findings, well, they're sobering. Only about 1/3 of Boise youth say they feel mentally healthy on a daily basis. Cost, transportation, and access to opportunities emerge as major barriers, even in a city rich with programs and good intentions. So today, we're talking about what these findings mean and what comes next. So joining us are Boise City Council member Jimmy Halliburton and Garrett Lamb, Director of Community Partnerships for the City of Boise. Together, they're helping shape how the city and our community responds to what youth and families say they need. I want to welcome both of you to the program today.
Gemma, thanks so much for having us in today.
Thank you.
So Jimmy, let me begin with you because you've worn two particular hats for years. You founded the Boise Bicycle Project, a nonprofit, and now, as I mentioned, you are a city council member. So when you take a look at this roadmap, where do you see these two perspectives overlapping most clearly?
That's such a great question, and they overlap so much. And I think it even goes further back from there. So I was born and raised in Boise, and this was a great place to grow up. And there were so many organizations that I was a part of that helped me, that kind of helped lead me to the different opportunities that I've had that I look back on so fondly. When I was working at the Boise Bicycle Project, I really started to notice that we have an incredible community of youth and youth-serving organizations that are doing so much to make sure that Boise continues to be this great place that I grew up in, but also is reaching out to folks who maybe didn't have the same incredible experiences that I had growing up, some of our more vulnerable community members. When I was working at the Bike Project, I think kind of in the late teens, 2018, 2019, we started to see this growing youth mental health crisis across the country, but we saw it very specifically in Idaho. We've consistently had some of the hardest numbers to look at as far as youth mental health and youth suicide. And all of the nonprofit organizations were really doing a lot to address this. And then when I was elected to city council in 2020, of course, the pandemic hit and we saw those issues amplify even more. And so in the last couple of years, through this crisis, this mental health crisis and this, self-harm and suicide, I really started asking myself, what can we be doing more at the city of Boise to make sure that every single thing that we do through a lens of empowering youth, making sure that they can grow and thrive and ultimately contribute to our city. And so I am so lucky that I got to work on this youth roadmap with Garrett and some of our other staff members at the city of Boise to figure out what can we be doing at the city of Boise to make sure that our youth are not slipping through the cracks and that they can continue to grow and thrive in our community.
So Garrett, this research involved hundreds of youth as well as parents and dozens of organizations. So from your standpoint, what did the city hear that it didn't fully understand before you went through this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I too grew up in Boise and, had a wonderful childhood here and had access to a lot of great services and programs that the city offered. I remember getting my activity guide in the summer and going through it with my parents to pick out what camps I wanted to go to in the summer and just playing by the river. And so it's been really interesting now that I'm on city staff and an adult looking through a different lens, a systemic lens of what could we be doing better as a city. We did sit down with parents. We sat down with youth in long form focus groups and had some great listening sessions. We also did a survey of over 1,000 parents and youth, and we really just wanted to understand what the city was doing well, the city of Boise, what youth serving organizations across the city are doing well, and where the gaps are. And I think, we found three buckets of gaps, sort of the wellness findings, the different activities and opportunities, and then the infrastructure findings, how the city is built, and how we could be building Boise of the future that promotes more connectivity, and more unity across neighborhoods. We knew well from the data and from the experience a couple years ago with youth suicides, that we needed to be doing more as a community to lift up the wellness of our young people. We have come a long way. I think Boise School District is doing an incredible job hiring more social workers and counselors. And at the same time, we all know that we have doctor shortages in Idaho. When crisis hits, parents and young people talked about how difficult it really is to access, those crisis counselors and those supports that they need when they're in crisis. I think in the activities and opportunities bucket, we all know recreation, the outdoors, creative outlets like art and music. Boise is just so full of those opportunities. But in the winter, in moments like today where there are inversions, our trails close up, the opportunities to play outside dwindle. So the city really looked at that and said, oh, wow, this is really interesting. There are really seasonal gaps for recreation that we would need to start addressing. And then lastly, in transportation, everyone we talked to talked about how difficult it's becoming to navigate Boise. Parents talked about feeling like full-time chauffeurs taking their kids from activity to activity. And so we really wanted to start looking at ways that we can promote bus use and to continue building more pathways and bike paths across Boise. And one of the findings of this infrastructure finding allowed us to make the decision that over the next 2 years, from May 1st to August 31st, all summer, youth are going to be able to ride the bus for free to get to these different opportunities, to get to their camps, to get to different neighborhoods, to get to the mall. And that's just one small example of the way we can use these findings, these conversations, to spur action in the city.
So you mentioned transportation, and Jimmy, I want to dig into this a little bit more because transportation actually came through as the single biggest barrier for youth access. And for teens, what does reliable and affordable mobility actually unlock in daily life? And I will say this, my teen is lucky enough to have a car and get himself around, and he still complains that there's nothing to do. So I wonder also how much of this as well is some teenage angst, right? Where you don't love where you grow up.
Yeah, you said something earlier when you first came on that I've been thinking about and kind of reiterated when you asked this question about some of these sobering details that we saw through this study. And like you said, there is this angst. And I think that my kids got a car, but do they still want to go do something? I think one of the things that I think is so exciting about this youth roadmap is that some of the problems that our teens are facing, they're providing ideas for solutions that are somewhat simple. And so in the example that you just brought up, yes, maybe they've got a car, maybe they've got transportation, but maybe they just don't have a place to go where they feel welcome, that is teen focused, that is teen centered. It was interesting to figure out the places that our teens really like to go. And in the summertime, Garrett was right. They were going to the park, they were going to these places that were really easy. But in the wintertime, when those sort of outdoor activities closed up, they couldn't really find those spots. And I've got a teenager at home, and they would go shopping at Walmart because they knew they could walk around in Walmart and not get kicked out. And so I think one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves, as the city, as organizations, as parents, is what can we do to create a better space for our teens to go where it's free, where they feel welcome to be who they are, where it doesn't necessarily have to be super structured. It's just a place where they can hang and they can do something. And so I think it's kind of a combination of those things. It is like recognizing the transportation barriers that so many folks have that keep them from being able to participate in clubs or sports or nonprofits or daily activities. But it's also making sure that we have daily activities that are fun, accessible, and the kind of things and stuff that our teens
Hmm.
want to do. And our nonprofits are doing some of those things. And I think the city of Boise, through this youth roadmap, has the ability to partner with them more, and has the ability to be working with them and trying to help provide, through partnership, better spaces for our teens and our youth to go to.
And Jimmy, how do equity and geography shape those infrastructure decisions?
Oh, it's huge. And we talk about this through our city's walk to a park goal, our 10-minute walk to a park goal. If you live in the north end close to Camel's Back Park and you go by there during the summertime or the fall, all you have to do is open your eyes and you can see teens playing there, all over the place. They can just walk from their houses or ride their bikes over. Kids that are living over off of Overland or in Southwest Boise or, even off of a Ustick and Eagle Road, they don't have that same opportunity to just leave their driveway on their bicycle or a scooter, or walking and go down to a park where they can hang out with everybody. Those parks are maybe there, but we have to make sure that those barriers of how do the kids get there? Is it a bus? Is it a bike? Is it a pathway system? How can we create a better walkable, bikeable systems? Or do they not actually even have a park or a place at all? And so again, I think through this plan, what we have now is a new lens, that we can look through every single thing that we do to the city at the city, whether it's passing our budget, whether it's building a new park, the amenities that we put in there. Are we putting things in there for just, a playground for younger kids and softball fields for adults, or are we making sure that there's something that's going to serve all ages? So this new lens that we have, a youth lens, also an equity lens, making sure that we're looking at the youth who don't have the same access, to some of these things.
Hmm.
And you can see that in some of the work the city's already doing with some of our accessible playgrounds, other things like that. But it's sort of a reiteration that, hey, we have some gaps out there. We know them now, and we have to be building towards those gaps.
And Jimmy, I want to go back to something you mentioned about the simple solutions that teens gave the city, because it sounds to me like what they want in a lot of situations is a place to exist, right? So even though we have these great programs, right, there's all of these things that may not necessarily be what they want. I mean, my teen goes to the park, right? And plays basketball with his friends. I mean, or they go to the Y, right? It's simple things. So, and I know you touched on this, but if you could maybe go into a little bit more depth, I mean, how does that idea challenge the traditional ideas when we talk about things like public space, right? Or even public safety? Because again, like I know, like you mentioned, your teen walking around Walmart, my teen walking around downtown Boise, right? And you want that to be safe for them.
Well, I think that the guiding principle is here is what do the teen want? Do the teens want? And there's a reason why, like, I didn't just go out there and start trying to build things that I think that teens want in their neighborhoods. Like, we had to go and actually ask them and have conversations with them. And Garrett can maybe talk to that process a little bit more. But we have to be looking to see what is it that our teens want to see. So if we're building a new park, we do a community outreach process and we typically have, parents that are reaching out and things like that. But are we specifically going to teens and saying, hey, we're building a new park in your neighborhood. What are the things that you would want to see? And they might say, oh, we want a place to hang our hammocks, or we want a place to check out spike ball, or do all these different types of things. They have to be the ones coming up with some of those solutions, but we have to be creating space for them to do that. And I think that this process, this roadmap process, gave us a lot of insight, but it's also telling us that we need to continue to have that engagement with teens so that they can drive the change that they're looking for going forward.
Mm. Garrett, the other thing I want to talk about is something that many families gave their thoughts on in this roadmap, and that's around mental health support. Some families describe it as frankly getting lost, right, when they were trying to find mental health support. So, what role can the city, I mean, truly realistically play in simplifying access without duplicating existing services?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think the reality is there's a lot of really great partners in the community that are doing great work. under really difficult environmental circumstances. I think 988 is a crisis line that people can call if they're in crisis, but not many people know that if you're a young person, if you're under 18, because of state law, uh, they need parental consent before they can be on the call with 988. And so, there are just some sort of, there's just some systemic barriers that I think the legislature is also looking into fixing to make sure that 988 can respond to those calls. And I also think there's a lot of partners doing great work in terms of care navigation. The Bridge is one of those partners. And it's a newer organization that came out of Ada County Juvenile Corrections. And they sat back and they said, before kids get in the juvenile correction system, maybe we can get them access to therapists. Maybe we can sit down with them and talk to their parents about what's going on at home. Are they getting enough sleep? Are they getting enough? Do they have access to food? And they sit down with the whole family and they help get them access to services to intervene before that youth is in crisis. And I think the city, when we look at what partners are already doing, we can just do more to amplify what these partners are already doing, but we can also have conversations with community partners about what changes we need to make sure that we're getting rid of the barriers to access.
Before I let both of you go, I want to end by asking you both the same question. And Garrett, let me start with you. If you look 5, even 10 years out, what would success look like for Boise youth if this roadmap is actually taken seriously moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the answer I would say is just going back to young people and asking them. Communities for Youth is a great partner organization that surveys young people in our schools. And they ask them questions every year about how they're doing and what more we could be doing to do better. So I would just say, when we ask young people, clinical rates of depression will be lower. We have a environment in the city where we're folding in more youth voices into decision making, and youth continue to report that they are really excited to be growing up in Boise and are having a great experience, and that they stay in Boise.
And
Yeah,
Jimmy,
Gemma,
if you could wrap up.
Yep, I would say 5 years from now, I hope to see more spaces where teens can go, where they feel welcome, where it's free, where they can, be with friends or meet new friends, where they can talk about mental health issues with each other, or they can just be teenagers. And I think the city has a great opportunity to work with our nonprofit partners, the school districts, to create more of those teen-centered spaces that they really just don't exist and there's not enough of them, and that people can get there safely by walking, biking, taking the bus, and just getting out of their house and having more social interactions with people from the community. And I think that that's really possible.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much for taking time to talk with us about this and sharing this roadmap with us. We've been talking with Boise City Council member Jimmy Halliburton and Garrett Lamb, Director of Community Partnerships for the City of Boise. We've been discussing the findings of a new youth roadmap study of the City of Boise. I'm Gemma Gaudette, and this is Idaho Matters.
Hey, I'm Peter Pruitt from Zoo, Idaho.
And I'm Dr. Leif Tapinola with the Idaho Museum of Natural History.
Together, we host The Nature of Idaho, a podcast all about how our state's amazing landscapes, wildlife, and geology shape life here in the Gem State.
Each week, we dive into nature stories from across Idaho, everything from fossils to forests, and sometimes even a few fun facts you can share on your next hike.
So join us as we celebrate everything that makes wild Idaho special.
Listen to The Nature of Idaho from KISU, wherever you get your podcasts, or at KISU.org.